In the bleak autumn of 1914, the desperate race to the sea reached its grim conclusion near the strategically vital Belgian city of Ypres. Allied and German armies sought to outflank one another, extending their lines northwards in a frantic race towards the key English Channel ports. This crucial region of Flanders, a low landscape of muddy fields and canals, was fated to become a terrible cauldron of modern industrial war. The German High Command, determined to achieve a decisive breakthrough, amassed a formidable force to assault the thinning Allied defensive lines. Their primary objective was clear and strategic: capture Ypres, sever British supply lines, and push the BEF back into the unforgiving sea. On October 20th, a terrifying storm of steel erupted as the German 4th and 6th Armies began their massive, coordinated offensive. They advanced with a frightening momentum, crashing like a great wave against the fragile positions held by French, Belgian, and British soldiers. Among the German ranks were thousands of young, inexperienced but brave student volunteers, filled with a fervent and fatalistic patriotic zeal. This tragic deployment would become known as the Kindermoord by Ypres, the Massacre of the Innocents, a grim and haunting legend of the war. The initial fighting raged fiercely around Langemarck, where these young German soldiers advanced in determined shoulder-to-shoulder waves. They faced a ferocious storm of machine gun fire and disciplined volleys from the professional soldiers of the British Expeditionary Force. The Allied line bent dangerously under the immense pressure of relentless, numerically superior German assaults that continued for days. Holding a critical sector of this fragile front was the British Expeditionary Force, the BEF, a small but exceptionally professional, seasoned army. These soldiers, nicknamed the Old Contemptibles by the Kaiser, were undisputed masters of incredibly rapid and accurate rifle fire. Their practiced skill was such that German troops often mistook their coordinated volleys for the continuous chatter of many machine guns. Yet the BEF was stretched perilously thin, tasked with defending a vast and vulnerable front against overwhelming numbers of enemy soldiers. Every available man was desperately needed to plug the constant gaps, fighting with a grim tenacity to hold the line against the gray-clad tide. The brutal Battle of Langemarck inflicted catastrophic losses on both armies as fierce attacks and counterattacks swept across the torn sugar beet fields. Mud, churned by constant artillery and incessant rain, became a malevolent third combatant to the soldiers on both sides of the front line. It clogged rifles, swallowed vital supplies, and exhausted the men, adding a grinding misery to the already industrial horrors of modern combat. The Germans, despite immense and unsustainable casualties, continued pushing forward, relentlessly seeking a weak point in the Allied defensive line. Their main focus then shifted south to the Gheluvelt plateau, a slight rise in the landscape offering a key strategic advantage to its owner. Control of this unassuming plateau was absolutely essential. Its loss would completely unhinge the southern flank of the vulnerable Ypres salient. By late October, the situation had grown desperate for the hard-pressed British defenders clinging to that crucial piece of elevated ground. The German forces concentrated their artillery and launched a massive assault, which finally overwhelmed the exhausted British defenders. The pivotal village of Gheluvelt fell into German hands, and a wide, catastrophic gap was torn open in the British defensive line. The main road to Ypres now lay terrifyingly exposed, and a complete collapse of the Allied position seemed merely moments away. A gnawing panic began to spread as alarming news of the German breakthrough filtered like wildfire through the communication trenches. Field Marshal Sir John French, the BEF's commander, even considered a general retreat to more defensible positions west of the threatened city. It was a moment of supreme crisis, where the fate of the war on the Western Front seemed to hang by a single fraying thread. Then, in a moment of sheer desperation, the 2nd Battalion of the Worcestershire Regiment launched a decisive and heroic counterattack. Just under 400 exhausted men, advancing from Polygon Wood, charged across open ground into a devastating hail of German machine gun fire. Their valiant, near-suicidal charge smashed directly into the disorganized German flank, stunning the surprised enemy with its incredible ferocity. In a furious, chaotic burst of close-quarters combat, the Worcestershires recaptured Gheluvelt, miraculously plugging the gap in the Allied line. This single courageous action stabilized the front at its most critical juncture, effectively saving Ypres and the BEF from total disaster. Though vicious fighting would continue into November, the German offensive had finally lost its unstoppable and terrifying early momentum. Both opposing armies were utterly exhausted, depleted by weeks of relentless combat and the horrific level of casualties they had endured. The cold, wet weather worsened considerably, turning the battlefield into a nightmarish quagmire of mud and water-filled shell craters. Soldiers on both sides, seeking shelter from the elements and enemy, began to instinctively dig deeper, reinforcing their temporary, shallow trenches. This spontaneous digging marked the solemn, unspoken end of the war of movement that had defined the conflict's bloody opening months. The First Battle of Ypres had finally sheltered to a halt, leaving behind a shattered landscape of profound ruin and human suffering. The Allies had successfully held the city, denying the Germans their breakthrough and securing the vital channel ports for the rest of the war. But this crucial victory came at an unimaginable price, particularly for the British, whose original professional army was now shattered. The Old Contemptibles were virtually wiped out, and the Ypres salient, a vulnerable bulge into the German line, was set in blood. This newly forged salient would remain a place of unimaginable horror, destined to consume countless more lives in the coming years of static trench warfare.